Well, welcome into another episode of Story World. Steve Schramm here with my boy Al. What's up, Al?
It's been a great night so far. Steve and I were able to, what is it? The AirPlay, AirShare, Apple Share, all the
Share
fancy
play.
terms.
Close enough.
SharePlay, I was close enough. SharePlay, first time using it, and so at least with good old Steve here, and we were able to watch the fourth episode of Star Trek. So still chipping away at that, and enjoyed it very well.
Yeah, dude, it was pretty legit. It was super cool to do that. Like, I remember back in the day, me and my wife, whenever we would watch videos, we'd be like propping the iPad up, TV, and like
Yeah.
trying to make it to where we could see each other and still see what was happening. And it was pretty crazy. So anyway, this was a different experience. Found that it even, like, mutes, like, it
Mhm.
it lowers the volume of what you're watching if somebody talks. It's really cool. So, if you
Really.
haven't tried Apple SharePlay, totally try it.
And a
It's
cool thing that we discovered too, because Steve likes subtitles. I don't dislike subtitles, but I just don't use them. And Steve was able to turn on subtitles for him and it wouldn't show on my screen. So very definitely very user
yes.
friendly there.
Yes, when you have 4 loud children, you just kind of get used to turning the subtitles on to everything.
You
You
just
know,
mute the TV and you just
I'll tell
read
you
it
though,
now.
the thing I hate about subtitles, though, is that it spoils punchlines, right? Because the subtitles come
It
up before
does.
they finish the
Uh,
words,
yeah.
and so you're like laughing for what's about to be said,
Yeah.
and it's really kind of
Yeah.
funny, and it I don't know, it
Yeah.
bugs me, but at the same time, it's like, what do you do? I have to have it, so,
What are you gonna do?
yeah, very cool. Well, speaking of the small screen, today we are talking about the big screen again. That's right, my friends. We are covering the movie Interstellar, which I have just seen for the first time with Alex at our movie night last week. And he has seen it gobs of times, I think by now. I don't know how many times, but
A lot.
yeah. So we're excited to chat through it, man.
Yeah. I am extremely excited. Next, I was telling Steve, kind of, if you hold the Prestige and Interstellar up side by side, it's on any given day, either one of those could be my favorite movie. And Interstellar certainly captures that thrill and excitement that just Christopher Nolan does again and again. I brought it up a couple times. Steve, maybe he's sick of me bringing it up, but I'm just amazed at how many good movies Christopher Nolan makes.
Mm,
Just even like the ones where
yeah.
it's like, oh, he kind of ventured a little bit too far here. It's a little bit odd. Even those movies are like terrific. It's just very interesting how consistently he delivers on it.
Yeah, and, just so 2 things. Number 1, if you would like to hear our thoughts on The Prestige, go back and check out episode number
Yes.
17 of the podcast from
Yep.
May 12th, where we covered The Prestige, and, I think another thing that might be kinda cool to do is to talk about some of our favorite, like, directors, because obviously directors and producers and such, they have a very well, they are, I mean, basically responsible for how movies turn out. And
Yep.
so it would be sort of interesting to talk about some of the, just directors that we like and, things like that. So,
Absolutely. Yeah, and so, just as a heads up to everyone here, should go without saying, but full spoilers for everything coming up. So if you haven't seen it, go
yeah,
see it. Trust me, like if you're listening to us and you've been sick with us, it's a movie you'll probably like. So go ahead
yeah.
and watch it. And then we'll talk about it. Or if you don't care about spoilers, then have at it, I
Yeah,
suppose.
good thing about a podcast, you can come back any old time. I'll still be here when you're ready, so you can
Come
pause it
back
right now,
anytime.
watch the movie, come back later, and, pick up right where you left off. So,
Yes,
um
absolutely.
so maybe, should we go ahead and talk through maybe just the general plot? Does that make sense? Or
Yeah,
should we just
I'll give a very general plot of it. I won't
let's
even
do it.
probably say anything much about the ending just to kind of set up what the movie is. So,
Sure.
takes place in the future. I don't think it ever specifically says exactly when in the future. Based on one line of dialogue, it probably 80 or so years from now, give or take a little bit less, a little bit more. So it's a future Earth of, again, just from dialogue, sounds like a majority, probably even a vast majority of the world's population has been killed, either directly through a like disease going around called a blight that's killing off crops, or indirectly by poor government decisions and like killing innocent people so that people don't starve to death and other stuff that just kind of gets subtly brought up. But the world's population has dwindled, and so a lot of people really the survival is just farming, and the last crop on earth that people are trying to, really just sustain the population is corn. And so what takes place is the main character, Cooper, who's played by Matthew McConaughey, he's right there from the beginning of the movie to the very end, and he He was an airline pilot. In the past, it kind of opens up with a scene with him doing that, and throughout the movie, he ends up stumbling upon some interesting stuff with his daughter, discovers that NASA is still around secretly, building a project to kind of save the Earth by taking humans away from Earth to a different planet by a wormhole that has appeared next to Saturn by and they don't know who they is throughout the movie, and takes you to other galaxies or solar systems, and yeah, to potential worlds that can sustain life to have the human civilization survive.
There's a Christian band called I Am They, so I wonder if
Hmm.
they are they.
Oof. Just adds a. Do they have access to the sixth dimension?
I don't know, they kinda look like hippies, so
Oh, so they probably are into a lot of stuff.
that explains it, right?
Yes. So I think I covered the. There's obviously a lot
Yeah,
going on there, but that pretty much is the gist of it. And so that's the movie title, Interstellar. And if you, e-
yeah.
again, this is just me, but just if you like space in general, like Steve and I are both like huge, space freaks. We like talking about space stuff, and we find it really extremely interesting. So if you like that kind of stuff, and if you've seen the movie, you can relate. If you haven't watched it, you probably will relate. But just like seeing the title on screen with Interstellar and just knowing the big seriousness and drama of traveling through space this movie provides, it really really satisfies that urge for someone who likes the exploration of space and wishes, oh man, I wish I could get up there and see the stars. This movie really comes about as close as you can get to kind of having that feeling of what it could possibly be like with interstellar travel. I don't know. Does that kind of sum it up pretty good for you, Steve?
Yeah, I think so. I think, just based on that so far, I just wanted to make 2 sort of general comments.
Yep.
One is I think if I had to summarize what I thought the movie was, because again, I watched it for the first time last week, so,
Yep.
um, if I sort of had to summarize it, I would say it's like a disaster movie, but with good writing. Um,
Mhm.
it's
Yeah.
like,
Yep.
I mean, it's kind of funny, right? Because disaster movies are almost kind of like, they are, I mean, their own sort of genre and their own sort of feel, and it's like, in a sense, you expect them to be bad, but, like, they're so bad that they're good. I think of movies
That's the
like
genre.
right, yeah, I mean, there's hardcore ones, right? Like Sharknado, okay, that's like next level of
Yeah.
disaster.
That's yeah.
There's a few that I would put in the category of, like, The Core. Have you seen The Core?
Yeah.
Um,
Long
yeah,
time ago. But yeah, I do
mhm,
remember that. That was yeah,
yeah,
more serious tone.
it was more serious, but it still sort of had that, like, way beyond believability,
Yeah.
it really seems like this could not happen, but it's okay, right? Because it fit the genre. Um as I was watching Interstellar, I thought, okay, I'm getting disaster movie vibes, but given the director, given the writing and everything so far, I'm like, yeah, it's like a disaster movie, but like with good non-cheesy
Mhm.
storytelling. And
It's the
so I
most
really
serious disaster
appreciated
movie
that.
you could ever watch. Like, really,
I think so. I mean, now I would put, and maybe it's I guess ironic because, it's still a space movie or whatever, but I think that I would put Armageddon personally in about this same
Mhm.
category.
Yeah.
Maybe a little less. I'm not necessarily, this is more gut, right? I'm not measuring this objectively
Right,
by
right.
anything.
Yeah, yeah.
But I get the same sort of feel out of something like Armageddon, as I do this, because of the writing and because Aerosmith recorded the theme song. That's
Yeah,
obviously the main thing. Whereas as much as I love Deep Impact, in fact, I might even love Deep Impact better than Armageddon, I
good
still
one.
kind of feel like Deep Impact is maybe more like The Core a little bit, okay? So I'm
Mm,
kinda putting them on the same, so I'm kinda thinking like Deep Impact and The Core are maybe kinda similar.
yep.
Armageddon and Interstellar are maybe sort of similar, but of course, I think, um, Interstellar maybe cranks up the notch on the darkness a little bit, which I think would be
Yeah.
consistent with Christopher Nolan as well.
Mhm. Yeah,
Um,
so, like, Steve and I are necessarily saying, "Hey, for all you disaster movie fans out here, this is your kind of movie." It not
that
it
may
yeah,
not
it's,
be.
yeah, it may not be 'cause I kinda have a note here that coincides really well with Steve saying is it I don't really know how to categorize this movie specifically into a genre. Like, yes, it's
Right.
sci-fi. Yes, it is disaster. Yes, it is like space opera-ish. It is. It is a lot of different things at once. And even in the beginning, it has a little bit of a documentary vibe. It kind of leads off with people kind of like older people saying about what the past generation was like. And it really sets a stage for a realistic setting where you almost feel like, okay, this is like my world. This is our world that we're in.
Yeah.
And then it kind of slowly goes into disaster. And then it slowly moves further into sci-fi. And it really touches a big variety of genres, which is a really cool thing to do and also have it be a good movie. Some movies really unsuccessfully try to blend 2 or more things, and it just does not work at all.
Yeah, they hooked me big time in the beginning,
Mhm.
not gonna lie, because, like, the, it had sort of this tech and Western vibe, like, it had this super Western feel, again, like you mentioned, with the old people and sort of like the documentary thing. You obviously saw, like, the dust and, like, the old house or whatever, but then you saw,
Yeah.
like, this super high-tech looking computer equipment, and so, like, in the very, very beginning, like, literally the opening scenes, you're somehow in the future and the past at the
Mhm.
same time,
Yeah.
and, of course, that sort of foreshadows, what happens later in the movie, but at the very beginning, though, it really hooks you in because it's like, I don't know where I am. Now, fortunately, I would say within the first 10 minutes or so, they actually give you some context for that, and they sort of explain how they are in necessarily how they are in the future, but they have sort of culturally regressed to a past time. And of course, you do find out that's because of the blight. You find out that people are being killed. You find out that it's all the crops, all the food, um,
I made
is
a
gone.
note I made a note here that again, Steve and I probably more of this episode so far than any other really correspond with our notes we have here. So I have a note, I think Nolan the movie is long. It is a 3-hour movie. But, in spite of that, Nolan really I mean, despite that, Nolan really condenses as much stuff as he can. So Nolan gives you a very accurate representation of the world he wants to show you, and he doesn't give you any more than that and doesn't give you any less than you need to know. I just think he really set up the world in a great way where you knew what was happening, you knew what was going on, and he just did it perfectly through storytelling and showing, not telling. Just through the natural progression of the story.
Yeah, I remember mentioning that to you as well. Even when we were watching the
Yep.
movie, that like, man, I'm just so surprised at like they're not explaining anything.
Right.
They're
Yep.
just showing it happen, and, yeah, though it was good. Later on, they did have to do some explaining, because some of the concepts were getting kind of wild.
Yep.
Maybe this is a point to, and again, we're just kind of free flowing here, so maybe this is a point to address, one of my gripes, with the movie, and, y there there's even so let's talk about the science, okay, real quick for a minute. So there's even a book called The Science of Interstellar that has been written, by this guy named Kip something. He's got a YouTube talk out there, Science of Interstellar. I'm looking it up on YouTube or on Amazon. It's by Kip
Okay.
Thorne, The Science of Interstellar, and, I I don't know, one of the things, so I actually listened to a podcast, with a scientist, and he was talking, they were doing a review of this movie, and, he sort of acted like, and he explained some of his reasoning for things, but he sort of acted like most of what went on in the second, basically, act of the movie onward, didn't really seem to conform well with what we actually know about science. One example of this is, of course, in the movie they do a lot very near a big black hole. They call it gargantuan, and especially when you get close to the very end of the movie, they basically um, they are on approach into this black hole, and in fact, Matthew McConaughey and, one of the robots, Tar, that's with them, they actually end up going into this black hole. Well, everything that we know about black holes right now would tells us that you would be pulled apart by gravity and destroyed before you made it
Yeah.
anywhere near the, being able to even enter into the black hole. So, um So that I mean, that's pretty central to the story. And so if that doesn't work in real life science, it's kind of difficult. Now you say, well, this is a science fiction movie, and this is true. Um, but they even had scientists, and I don't know if it's this Kip guy, it might have been, but maybe it wasn't. I'm not sure. But they even brought in scientists to consult with them in the making of this movie to sort of make sure that they were staying within the bounds of what is, at least theoretically possible. And so I guess I'm a little confused because I have some scientists, apparently some scientists were consulted in the making of this movie, and then other scientists are saying like this seems rudimentary, like not possible. So um so the reason I say it's a gripe is because I it, it's because they maybe didn't do a good job of sticking to real science, but yet they really wanted to do that, it seems like. So it's like I'm kind of cool if it's just like, okay, total science fiction, like we're just speculating on the possibilities of things here or whatever. But then if we're gonna do that, let's not pretend that we're being like really accurate with the science if we're not. And I know it's just a movie, and I'm not trying to spoil a good movie. It's just there's what I'm saying is there seems to be this tension, right? There seems to be this, well, they wanted to be scientifically accurate, but they weren't anyway, and why? If that's true. Now, I don't know enough about the science
I
to know whether that's really true or not, but that's where I'm at.
I'm not making excuses for that point because one of my gripes too is again, spoilers, but like the whole fifth dimensional thing with the gravity and how future humans are able to operate in a physical space with that and provide us with opportunity to work in that. Um, Obviously that is just all sci-fi, 100% right there. Like there's no,
Yeah,
science about, it.
yeah,
It's so. What my devil's advocate would be to that. I know you're not saying that it ruins the movie, but for a
no, it
scientist
does
might
not.
say, "Oh, that is like totally off. Like, why would you put that in there?" To someone like that, I would say, like, well, I mean, is it entirely possible that if those future humans, because we're operating in Christopher Nolan's world now, right? So in his
Right.
sci-fi world, there are future humans that made it accessible for us to operate in that fifth dimensional space inside that black hole. They even
Yeah.
made a wormhole for us to get to that galaxy in that solar system. Would it not be also possible for them to, within the confines of what they know, make it so that Gargantuan, that black hole, would be able to take McConaughey in without shredding him to
Y
pieces?
yeah,
And
that's possible.
and
I suppose
again,
that's possible.
that's what.
Yeah.
But I say that, but it's one of my gripes with sci-fi and fantasy at times is that you can almost just kind of introduce anything to wish it whatever. But it's one of those things where Nolan always operates, not always, he real a lot of his movies operate in a real world, and then he adds a spice of sci-fi that's impossible. And your mind takes a jolt when that
Yeah.
happens. Like the first time I watched it, I really kind of hated, like really did it almost ruined the movie for me, that part about just the whole fifth dimension. I was really expecting something realistic through the whole thing. And then after I watched it more and more, we kind of talked about this after the movie was over. I've learned to enjoy it and then just kind of appreciate it for what it is. Because like, well, with the prestige, that's a pretty daggone realistic movie until you get to the cloning part. And even though that we talked before that has some realities too, but not to that extent at that point in time. So in Nolan's world, you kind of have to accept that there's going to be some weird stuff and kind of operate in that world of his.
Yeah, and I'm also willing to, um I'm also willing to admit that the scientist who I followed who was explaining these things is just wrong or way out of his depth. Now, to be fair, so let me. I just want to harp on this a little bit more. Now, I totally agree with what you're saying. As I'm looking at this book, so the guy's name is Kip Thorne, right? He wrote the book, The Science of Interstellar. He was the guy who was the scientific advisor on this movie. He also um is the Feynman Professor of Theoretical Physics Emeritus at Caltech, an executive producer for Interstellar, and the author of books including best-selling Black Holes and Time Warps. He lives in Pasadena, California. He's also, if I read this correctly, a Nobel Prize winner in physics. So,
The guy knows a little bit.
Um, the guy that now don't get me wrong, I love the scientist who I am talking about. However, he is a PhD, he's a scientist, but his field is marine biology. So, so it is possible that the guy who won a Nobel Prize for his work in physics and consulted with the people in the movie might have an idea for how some of this is at least theoretically possible.
And it's one of those
You know,
things though where it does come down to, like, I think if you really are interested in space at all, without getting sucked in the movie, because you almost don't think about watching the movie, but if someone just asked you if you know a little bit about black holes and everything, if someone said, "Hey, like, what do you think would happen if you got to a black hole?" My initial thing, without even being a scientist, is like, well, honestly, it would probably either suck you in like really hard, and you would just like get crushed, or like pretty much ultimate answer would be death. And obviously, in Christopher Nolan's movie, like, the movie just can't end like that, and that's where you just have to accept, okay, now we're like, this is where the sci-fi part comes out. And so, like,
yeah,
scientists can argue write a paper about, "Oh, well, here's why Interstellar is wrong because, there's no way you get sucked in a black hole." And you just kinda think, "Well, yeah, no, duh, but it's a movie, and this is a cool way that he came up with." That kinda goes into,
yeah,
I forget where I kinda had it here, one of my points, but really Christopher Nolan's, like, boldness, I guess, and really putting forth that idea. I'm sure that it's kind of a crazy, wild one to take that hard of a twist in such a movie that really makes you feel like you're grounded in reality, to
yeah,
throw that in there. It's really wacky, and your mind kind of has to get adjusted to it. And
yeah,
so really kudos to him for putting that in there. And even though it is kind of eyebrow raising, it doesn't, maybe for some people it would, but it really doesn't ruin the movie. It might make you scratch your head a
right.
little bit, but it makes you think about it. And then we've talked before, but it's not like that is the ending and you're left on a cliffhanger like, well, that was weird. There actually is an even kind of truer ending after that. That's just a phenomenal ending to the movie.
Mhm. Yeah, now, I agree. One more thing that I'll say while we're sort of on this of the science, and
Yep.
then we could maybe move to some other things. Um,
Absolutely.
it does assume, and I'm a total nerd, which is why I know this, but it does assume, what's called the B theory of time, um, instead of the A theory of time. So to briefly say what those are, um, so the B theory of time is sort of this idea that temporal becoming, so where we experience the actual ticking of the clock and seconds and minutes. On the B theory of time, that's not real. Um, Time is this fourth uh, dimension, um, where everything kind of exists at once, and so tantamount to or maybe I should say paramount to the important to, I'm gonna use a word and I know what it means. Important to, that final scene at the end is the notion that the future humans were there to actually make the scenario to set the scenario up and make it possible.
Mm.
But that, of course, leads to the question of, well, wait a minute. Well, how are the future humans there if the current humans hadn't got a chance to get there yet? And the assumption underlying this is that the B theory of time is true, which sort of puts time on this separate fourth dimensional plane where everything really happens at one time. You just look at different points of a timeline. And this is how a
Yeah.
lot of people, especially a lot of Christians, think about time because they're used to hearing things in church like God is outside of time or something like that, where God can sort of like dip his finger in at different points in a timeline. Um, I don't actually, though, personally subscribe to that notion of time. I subscribe to what's called the A theory of time, which means that temporal becoming is real. So, as the seconds count down and the minutes count down to 5 minutes from now, that time doesn't exist in some other dimension somewhere. That 5 minutes from now doesn't exist somewhere. It's becoming real at with each passing moment, if that makes sense. So on this view of time, there could be no future humans, um, because we're not there yet, because we are humans and we're not in the future. Now I realize again, I realize this is science fiction, but again, this is science fiction that is at least purporting to be very much grounded in real science.
Mhm.
And most physicists do take the B theory of time to be accurate. But now philosophers, okay, a lot of philosophers of science take the A theory of time to be accurate. And a lot of people, when they think about time, they're not thinking in terms of this, whatever, like this blob, this fourth
Yeah.
dimensional blob with a future point. most people experience time in, yeah, the seconds are counting down, the minutes are counting down, life is ticking away. And so it's sort of like the intuitive notion of time. That's the A theory. So if you think the A theory of time is accurate, then this scenario that is posed by the author will not be the case. But if you think the B theory of time is accurate, then it is something possible for future humans to be able to reach back, so to speak, if they figure out time travel. The other thing I'll say about this real quick is that currently, um, of time travel because of relativity and things like this, it is possible. We do know that it's in a sense possible to go forward in time. But what is not, given our current knowledge, able to happen is to go backwards in time. So
They
we can't change the past. Yeah.
they say that in the movie too. Like he asks yeah, Cooper asked Brand if there's a way. I think it was when after they got after I forget the name of the planet.
Yeah.
Was it Webb's planet? I forget that, but the water planet where he says like, is there a way that they can reverse time?
Yeah.
And she like says like there's like time is relative. You can slow it down, you can speed it up, but there's no way you can go back, which is obviously
Exactly.
related to the A theory of time, which I kind of subscribe to. But even taken you kind of also have to like if you're watching the movie, even if you don't know the actual term, yeah, B theory of time, in your mind, you kind of have to accept the fact, like, okay, this just is. It exists in this movie, and the
Right.
humans
Right.
are reaching back. But even with that, that's why I honestly really don't care. I anytime a movie, maybe it's because I'm not that big a fan of like Back to the Future. I just don't like movies that have
Mm,
time travel in it because of that reason. For me, it just is almost too much of a hump for me to overlook when the movie is solely about that. If they throw in like one part that's kind of cool, I'm like, okay, that's kind of neat. But as a
yeah,
whole, it's hard to overlook it when like a whole movie's like premise or foundation is about time travel
that's
because
right.
even if you force your mind into thinking the B theory of time, then it's just like, okay, well then what's the point if you could just kind of reach in and poke at any time that you want? Like, what's the
Yeah.
point of all this? Anyway,
Yeah.
we spiraled
Well,
on that one, but
nobody's here for a science lesson, so I guess we can move on to maybe some
anyway,
other things. Yes.
so because I actually want to end this, I feel like we've been kind of ragging on some stuff. I want to end it on my last bad note because I have obviously plenty of great stuff to say about it. It is one of my favorite movies, definitely top five, and it could even take the first spot depending on how I'm feeling on a given
Mm.
day. So the last negative thing I have to say about it, I just think it was a poor choice of casting Matt Damon in the movie.
What
Um,
do you mean? This is what he does. He gets saved by space people.
It's funny, as soon as I saw
He
that
does.
well, why don't you tell your little story? So Matt Damon's on there, and he said, "Is that Matt Damon?" And I said, "Yeah." He said, pause it," and you go ahead and tell it.
Yeah.
Well,
Well, I couldn't remember where I finally found that it was in my
for
podcast
those of you
feed.
who don't know, just Steve would probably say it too, but like specifically, I think I mentioned first, like Matt Damon pops up randomly in Saving Private Ryan as well, a little bit earlier in his career, of course, but and that's
Yeah.
behind the scene, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and so, like, apparently this is a thing. Matt Damon getting saved in movies is apparently a thing. And so if you search on Twitter for this, like, "Save Matt Damon," you'll find all sorts of stuff. Um, and I was like, "What in the world?"
The
And
Martian.
and so one of the podcasts, so I listened to a podcast called Above Board, and it's a podcast by 2 guys who started a company called Fathom Analytics. It's basically a privacy and censorship focused alternative to Google Analytics. And they had an upcoming episode called Can Matt Damon save Coinbase? So they were talking about Coinbase. Coinbase just laid off like something crazy, like 1,100
Mm,
workers or something like
yeah,
that. They're like that crypto site. Anyway,
yeah.
um, and so they, for fun, titled the episode "Can Matt Damon Save Coinbase?" And here is Matt Damon being saved in this movie. And I told Alex, I said, "Pause it. What is happening here?" Because I just saw something about this. And then sure enough, I looked it up, and it's just totally a thing. Matt Damon getting saved in movies like this is just totally a thing. I mean, and at the very least, Interstellar, The Martian, and Saving Private Ryan, he gets saved.
Yeah,
He gets
yeah.
rescued. Um, and so
Um,
apparently this is just when I saw Matt Damon on that screen, I was just like, "You got me freaking kidding." Oh,
yeah,
man.
so that was funny, but I'm gonna lead this bad point into my list of just amazing points about the movie. So the Matt Damon, I think Matt Damon's a great actor. Don't get me wrong, like he is phenomenal. And but just having that kind of presence there, and like when you see him, you're not thinking, okay, here's this character, this this space astronaut on this planet. You see him and you think, oh, that's Matt Damon, and it just takes you out of the movie, even for just a split second, and you were like, oh, that's Matt Damon, that's cool, and I just think it was a poor choice. It very quickly corrects itself. Matt Damon did a great job in that performing role. Again, Steve and I aren't really talking
Mhm.
as specifics as we did with the Prestige, but Matt Damon plays man and basically kind of sabotage the mission of fake people into coming to his planet saying it was good when it actually really wasn't, because he was really just afraid to die and he wanted to
Right.
keep on living. And so, anyway,
Yeah.
that leads though into my first great point, like official great point, is Matthew McConaughey. All right, all right, all
Oh,
right.
yeah. All right, all right, all
Uh,
right.
so, and Steve asked me, he said, has Matthew McConaughey ever played like in a real serious role like this? And later on, he brought up a movie where it really was serious, was The Lincoln Lawyer, and he did great in that. And I'm sure there's other ones, but um, man, he just a great performance from him in that movie. I was thinking back on it too. It's a long movie. It's a 3-hour movie. I think he's in.
3 hours.
I think he's in. Okay, not every scene, because sometimes it flashes back to what's happening on Earth, but he's in almost every scene in that movie. And there's a lot of weight and heavy scenes in there, and he just delivers every single time. The specific scenes that I'm thinking of are when he first sees like his I think it's when yeah, I think it's when he gets off the water planet and the legit slippages happen. I think it's like 23 years that have gone by. And he ends up catching up on all the videos from his family, and he sees his like
Yeah.
grandson being born and everything, and just he just starts breaking down and just bawling his eyes out. And that's just one out of maybe a half a dozen scenes where that happens. And it's just amazing. I just think he did a phenomenal job in that movie.
I think so too. Who doesn't love Matthew McConaughey? I mean,
Right,
honestly,
right.
I mean, all right, all right, all right. I mean,
Yeah,
he really is, and I yeah, it's like Alex was saying, I mean, I'm not really used to seeing him in movies that are like this, but he did
mhm.
a fantastic job. I feel
Right,
like
and
there
I'm not
probably are maybe other movies that he did this in, maybe I
probably.
just don't know what they are, but he was just, the drama, man, it was just really good. It was
Mhm.
really refreshing to sort of see him in a super serious role. Um, it fit him, man, and I think
Oh, it did. It fit him good.
great.
And I'm not obviously like there's so much to go. I'm not a professional judge or actor or anything, but it's almost one of those performances where you're like, wow, he like, and maybe he was, I don't know, but like be in the running for like best performance by an actor. Like it was that good, at least in my opinion, just as a spectator watching. And
Yeah.
then the casting for all the other parts was great. And it's great casting where after that kind of initial first hit in the beginning, where you're like, oh, it's that actor or actress, whatever, immediately
Yeah.
you forget it's them, and then it's the character. And so the movie did a great job with that. I don't know if you have anything to add to that point or not.
Um, no, I think just, maybe a general point about the cast and acting.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, you can't really argue with the cast. I mean, Matthew McConaughey, Matt Damon, Anne Hathaway, Michael Caine?
Yep.
Just, and I'm sure I'm forgetting some, but
Well,
man,
I don't know if you noticed, but the person who plays I can't think of his name, but the person who plays McConaughey's son in the movie,
yeah,
do you recognize the kid, the boy, his son?
no,
He I'm gonna botch the name, Timothy Chalamet. He's the one that plays Paul in Dune. Yep.
really?
Yep. So that was
Interesting.
like, 8 years
Okay.
ago, so quite a bit before, but, and then, the guy that plays the older brother is, Casey Affleck. Pretty sure that's who's the one that plays it. Just a lot of big name actors that you don't just really notice, at least for me the first couple times watching. But, yeah, anyway.
Dude.
Yeah,
Yeah, man.
just
Yeah,
cool
it was
stuff.
it was it was great. The acting I thought was great. I thought the
Mm,
just sort of the emotional interplay between, because obviously like the emotions were so high, the drama was so high. You've got, the uh the daughter of the scientist. So the scientist who's allegedly trying to really figure out this problem and spearheading the effort at NASA. He's played by Michael Caine, and then, the daughter, that's Dr. Brand, and then the daughter, Dr. Brand, is played by Anne Hathaway, and, they find out that he was lying. The doctor was
Mm,
lying all the time. I mean, for decades. I mean, 40 or 50 years, he was supposedly working on this equation, and trying to get it all figured out. And basically, he's trying to solve the problem of, of gravity. Harness
yeah.
the power of gravity to be able to actually fix the issue. Um, and they're all holding out hope that he figures out the answer to the
Mm,
equation. And you find out so much time passes as they're out there in space on Earth that he ends up passing away. And you find out in his deathbed, in his dying
mm,
basically scene, that it was all a sham, it was all a lie. And so the daughter out there in space ends up finding out that her father was a fraud,
mm.
basically.
Yeah.
Good, well intentioned, but a fraud, in the sense that he solved the problem, the equation, so to speak, ages ago. And the simple reality is that they needed data from inside of a black hole
Mm,
to get the gravitational information that they needed in order to solve the equation. And it just couldn't really be solved. And so so all this time they were holding out hope that they could save the people on the current Earth, and yet the scientist, Dr. Brand, and also the scientist who Matt Damon played, Webb. Is it Webb? I
Man, I
forget his name.
think.
Man, that's right, Man. Mann, that they rescued, he knew as well. And so the sort of
Mm,
the plan that ended up having to be carried out was what they called Plan B, which was basically repopulating a new civilization with embryos, and not saving anyone on the current Earth at all.
mm.
And so most of the cast is unaware of this, until a good, what would you say, 3/4 of the way?
Yeah,
Some
yeah, 2/3, 3/4, somewhere around that.
2/3, yeah, into the
And
movie.
throughout the whole movie, kinda going to my next point with that is, you really throughout the movie, it's cool anyway, you kinda slowly start to feel the weight of the seriousness of humanity kind of drifting into, like, possibly surviving or not. And so
Right.
the really first big hit is because 'cause you're not really expecting it, you're just not, is when they first go to the water planet and they have that issue where they're stranded because the waves, which is just a tremendous scene. Like, that was an intense scene. But after that, and they get up and they realize they lost 23 years, all of a sudden, you, the viewer, that's kind of the first hit where you're thinking, wow, so 23 years have passed. That's a
Yeah,
lot of time
that's a lot of time on
for a
Earth,
crunch
yeah.
time. And that's kind of where the weight settles in a little bit more. And then, and to me, this was out of all the tremendous great scenes and emotional scenes, I think my favorite scene is when Man, um, accidentally, like, opens up the air hatch or the airlock, and it blows up the Endurance on the one part, and it starts spinning,
Oh, yeah.
and then and then Cooper docks it. And just, that sounds simple in of itself. I mean, it's a tricky maneuver, but the music at that part and then the seriousness of it
That's
getting
so
to the end of the
intense.
movie, and it's my favorite lines in the movie. Tars, the robot marine says, he says, "We're gonna dock it." And Tars says, "That's not possible." And McConaughey says, "No, it's necessary."
Oh.
Because and it just like it
Um,
just hits you because
yeah,
like
man.
if that thing keeps going and drifting towards, I think it was drifting towards the planet, yeah, then it was going to burn up and like literally there goes humanity forever. Humanity's done. And that
Oh, yeah.
just that five, honestly, that sequence from when Man first throws McConaughey's, I'm switching between real name and movie names, um, voice and recorder or whatever, and throws it down, and that kind of treason kind of comes out, or not
Yeah.
treason, I'm missing the word. But, and then for the next honestly, from there till close to the end of the movie, it's just you're at the edge of your seat. And it's so anyway, yeah, those, moments to emotions and the hard-hitting emotions, even though I wouldn't classify it as a drama movie, it has more real drama and, like, emotion in it than, um, the majority of movies out there that claim to be drama, in my opinion.
Yeah, I totally agree. That's certainly one of the big points that I wanted to make as well. Is just the drama is incredible. It is a great drama movie, not just sci-fi movie. Um, And I think this is one of the reasons, even if you're not so into the science or whatever, like, it's really just that good from a
Mhm.
drama perspective. It's really just that good.
If you've
So
only watched this before you've had kids and now you have kids, watch it again. Because I guarantee you, you will
100%.
tear up at the
Oh,
"Don't
yeah.
make me leave like this, Murph."
Oh, yeah. Oh,
Oh, boy,
the
that's
relationship
the
between him and his kids is crazy 'cause the
mm,
mom has died. There is no mom.
yep,
And so you got a grandpa raising them. And, it's yeah, and what's crazy is that Murph, the daughter, never really forgives him, and then, of course, what you find out in the movie is that she ends up becoming a central character because she's so smart. She ends up
mhm,
becoming sort of the right-hand man to the doctor, Dr. Brand that we were just telling you about, and so in some sense, they sort of, like, switch daughters, right?
yes,
Like
yeah,
McConaughey's daughter,
interesting, yeah,
yeah, because you know what I mean? You know what I'm saying?
yeah, in a
For
way,
some
yeah,
reason, his character's name is, slipping my mind, Cooper, right?
yeah,
Is
Cooper,
that
yep, Cooper,
yeah, so Cooper's daughter, Murph, um, essentially ends up becoming the scientist's sort of daughter, and
mm,
the scientist's daughter is sort of out there with Cooper, and so in some sense, she sort of becomes like his daughter,
yeah,
and they sort of trade places. It's
it's
really weird.
interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's great though. Another small point, I just love, I don't know if it was Nolan's idea or someone else, but the concept of the robot Marines that they made.
Yeah.
Just a really cool added where you have a robot, but typically like in Aliens and also in Star Trek that I'm getting familiar with, is you have like these humanoid um robots that look like humans, and sometimes can fool you as humans, but they're actual like robots or AI. But in this one, it's like it's a robot. And the structure that they're built like a box with but like movable like appendages, it's you wouldn't think it'd work, but I just think that that was a very cool part of the movie that
It's
really
super
worked well.
unique. Yeah.
Yeah.
It just designed well, and, um, yeah, I would have expected it to be a little more, maybe a little less droid-like. It's
Mm,
very
yep.
Star Wars droid feeling.
Mhm,
It's a much more Star Wars take on a robot than a Star Trek take on a
mhm,
robot,
yeah.
if I can say that. Um, but, uh, but I liked it too. I agree. I'm glad
It
you
was
brought
cool.
that up.
The only other point I have really is the editing to talk about. So if you have anything else before we get to that, feel free to go for it.
No, well, for me, I think in general, we covered it, but really just the storytelling.
Mm,
It's just so good. I was hooked immediately. I mean, like I mentioned, like as soon as the first couple minutes came on and you kinda had like this tech thing going on, but then you also had this Western thing going on. You know, the show don't tell. I just keep coming back to that. I mean, the storytelling was just um phenomenal all throughout. If anything, the end, which you're getting to, um, I'm gonna be honest. This is gonna be maybe a controversial statement. I think the end is my least favorite part of the movie. And um, not not so what they did was cool. Um, and like I said, there's spoilers here. So what they did was cool. Basically, well, you're getting ready to cover the end, so I'm not gonna steal your thunder on the end. I'm just,
there
but
you go.
just
No, go for it.
but just at the very end though, that's where the storytelling sort of plays second fiddle to the explaining of how what just happened is possible. Because basically, and again, you're going to get to this, but essentially what you're looking at on the screen is a dude in a spacesuit floating around in a five-dimensional library. And okay.
Yeah,
so so
yeah,
when you're looking at Guy floating around in five-dimensional library in spacesuit. As you can imagine, there's a lot of, like, explaining what's going on because you're so freaking confused, and
mhm,
so so, uh, Cooper and Tars are sort of having this conversation back and forth as the scene is unfolding, where basically because of what they decided to do, because of the choice they made in the story, they sort of had to tell, not show. Like you were seeing something, but they
you
were
had
telling
to.
you what was happening.
Yeah,
And at that point, it's kind of like, I don't know, it's kind of like exactly opposite of what the rest of the movie did. The rest of the movie hardcore showed you things and you were trying to just figure it out. Whereas
mhm,
with this, you're looking at one sort of static thing and they're like downloading information to your mind. And you're like, how is this possible? And, um, uh,
Steve and I were
so
literally sitting in the chairs just going like this because we didn't know
yeah,
what to
yeah,
do.
yeah, we were just flailing our arms and shaking our heads and making crazy eyes.
Yeah.
And so I guess all I'm trying to say there is like that throughout the entire rest of the movie, it was the story, right? And now the the climax, or I don't know if the climax is the right word, but sort of the payoff at the end is so um theoretically dense, if I can say it that way,
Mm,
that it requires a lot of information download. And so I think actually the storytelling sort of um, fades off a little bit at that point. Now, again, I know that's another downer thing. It was really a great movie. I'm just saying, I think I enjoyed like 8/10 of, I'm sure I can reduce that to a smaller fraction, whatever. I'm not a
I
math
know.
guy. Um, I enjoyed like 8/10 of the storytelling of the movie, and then the other 2/10 I was kinda like, maybe not as
Mm,
good, not as satisfying as I would like, but in general, I mean, it was fantastic. I mean, the
yeah.
storytelling was honestly fantastic.
And so let me say this too. I agree with you, like pretty much fully on that. So from the time that they get sucked into Gargantua and the time where you see him floating in space, there it's sci-fi 100%, accept it, take it or leave it. Like
Yep.
that's you as the viewer. That's kind of the make or break apart. But I guess what I'm referring to specifically as the ending is once he's back after the after that portion, he's on the main ship.
I see,
That's
yeah.
what I like. I'm when I say ending, I'm really talking about what really did it for me. Like my last point is the ending, and I put it in parentheses. Regardless how you feel about the fifth dimension, after that fact, when it comes back to reality, it then get
Step
so
back to reality.
that
Oh, there goes
goes
gravity.
gravity.
Isn't it perfect? Right.
That was good. That was good.
Was
Oh
it
man.
though? Was it?
Uh, so yeah. So at this point, since getting sucked in the black hole too, like decades have gone by. So his daughter, we kind of figured out was probably around 90 years old now, maybe even a decade older than that, but
Mhm.
around that age. And he ends up seeing her one last time before she passes with all her kids and grandkids. And that scene was just so good, I think, to finish out the movie. A couple different reasons. One, he makes good on his promise that he'd see her again. And that just like was really heavy hitting.
Yeah.
So that
Oh,
was
yeah.
great. And even though they don't I feel like you could make like a television series out of it, but even though they don't go into detail of how humanity ends up happening, she kind of Murph in their old age kind of narrates to her father, like telling him to go to Brand because she is on this planet now by herself, waiting for all of human civilization to go. And it kind of shows her there on this planet without her helmet on, breathing in the air. It looks kind of desert like in a way, or very dry area. And it's just a really just a cool ending to cap it all off.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah, I really like that ending. It's just a really perfect topper to it all.
Yeah, I do. I agree. I think the ending was fantastic. I think the way that um, uh, they provided some serious resolution. However, you do, and this isn't a bad thing. It's good for the story, but it really does make you feel um, for how much, I mean, as a dad, of course, with a daughter,
Mm,
you really feel for how much. I mean, imagine, the last time you really see and interact with your daughter, really, she's what, 11 or 12 years old, or maybe no, 9. I think she's like 9.
yeah, she's
And
like between 9 and 11, something like that.
yeah, and then like the next time you see her, you're 40 or whatever, still 40s, and she's like 90. And
Mm,
yeah, she's like basically the hero of civilization. Um but it's kind of they get like literally a minute and a half together to talk, and
mm,
then it's like bye bye. Um and and it's crazy. And when you the actual visuals in this, I guess they're at basically this base, this star base near Saturn, I guess is
yep.
where they're at. And it's weird because you see the dimensional things, right? Like you see
Yeah.
like it looks weird, like everything looks different. You see things that are like upside down, and it's like, yeah, humans are now figuring out how to do this 4D, 5D
Mm.
thing. And it's it's good. I guess just to kind of put a button on it here. I mean, I would say from the storytelling perspective, I think the end nailed it. Again, from the science fiction perspective, I'm just like something in my brain is just like, I don't know, it's weird.
Yeah,
It's a
right.
little too out there. Like
Yep.
I've watched my share of Star Trek, which is as sci-fi as it gets, and I don't ever remember just randomly seeing upside down like
Yeah.
hills in the distance of where the guy is sitting. And so I'm just like, I think it exploded my category for sci-fi even beyond Star Trek, at which point I'm like, okay, I just don't know. So again, I'm sorry to be a downer on that point. And maybe that's reality, right? Maybe that is like, again, if really
Yeah.
if this super smart dude was an advisor on the film and really thinks that there's some sort of way of thinking and looking at reality that could be like that in the future, then sweet, awesome. It's just a little hard for me to wrap my head around, but overall, fantastic movie, great storytelling. The drama was incredible. I think I honestly, I think I really appreciated the drama and the storytelling, maybe even more than the sci-fi, even though I
Mm,
liked the sci-fi. Um, and I thought again that the cast was great. So fantastic movie. I mean, A plus plus as far as I'm
mm.
concerned. I might have sounded a little down on it, but that's probably just because I'm a scientific party pooper. From a storytelling perspective, which is what this podcast is about, I thought it was great.
One thing too, I just want to say one last thing because we kind of overlooked it, because storytelling definitely did take over for the great part of the movie, is how amazing the space visuals were in that thing.
Oh
Like,
yeah.
just
Yeah.
we kind of talked about it, and when they first go to space and they dock on the Endurance outside of Earth's atmosphere, they spend a good, I want to say, close to 10 minutes, at least 5 minutes, just them docking on it and giving you a perspective of
They
outside the
took their
spaceship. It
time. Yeah.
really took your time to feel the weight of wow, like they're alone in space now. So we kind of overlooked that point, but man, the visuals were just mind blowing.
Yep. Yep. 100%.
Anyway,
100%.
and you get to pick the next movie, my friend. So hopefully you pick something
No.
good.
I
And
know.
for
I
those of you, so if you ever came to one of Steve's and my movie nights, it's more than just the movie because we get giddy over all the burgers and
yeah.
sausages or whatever other
So
things
good.
I serve on the barbecue or on the stovetop, and we get pretty
Mhm.
giddy when it comes to that time.
I told my wife, spare no expense because our movie nights are basically market research. So I can for our podcast, so I can business expense all that junk, man.
Yeah,
It's
there we
it's
go.
pretty crazy. Um,
Perfect.
well, stories of the week, shall
Stories
we?
of the week. Yeah.
Very good.
I'll go first. That's fine.
Okay, go
So
for it.
mine again, someone who is a very casual Star Wars fan. I finally had the time and sat down and watched Kenobi. I think I watched 4.5 episodes. I got halfway through the fifth episode all in one night. I crashed that and really enjoyed it. Then I finished it out the following night. And I'm not going into Star Wars lore or anything like that. I am not well versed in that. Just from the service of watching Kenobi, I really like the series.
Yeah.
Really enjoyable. I mean, if I had to put a number to it, maybe like a 7 or 8 out of 10. I really liked it.
Wow.
Maybe not eight, a seven. It was definitely a seven. It was a good series. Again, not I'm sure there's Star Wars fanboys out there that might be like, "Oh no, it's awful. It's a 2 out of 10. It sucks because of this and this." But just as a
Yeah.
general fan, really great action. It was very they took like a really good risk of just kind of venturing out and showing you like an actual adventure. I thought it'd be more localized on Tatooine the whole time, but they branched it out. But they also kept it very focused on actual Kenobi and the dynamic between him and Anakin. And it was yeah, it was really good. They showed a lot of Darth Vader. So yeah, just a great series. Yeah, well worthwhile watching.
Sweet. Yeah, I'm gonna have to do that. I still want to get more caught up on the Mandalorian. I'm excited with what they're doing. In over in Star Trek land over there, or Star Wars land rather over there.
Mm.
It looks really good. I'm just trying to find the time to stay caught up with it in the midst of everything else going on. And
I know. Yeah.
based on the way July is shaping up, um, that's not going to be easy to do. So I'm
Yeah.
July's already looking pretty crazy from my perspective. So,
Yeah.
um, anyway, so my story of the week, simple. I've talked about it before, but I'm just really impressed with what the Daily Wire is doing. I think at this point, whether you're conservative or not, it's sort of like, um, uh, they now sort of demand you pay attention to them. They have more
Yeah.
reader engagement than reader and watcher or whatever viewer engagement than both the CNN and the New York Times. And when that's the case, you have something. You have something.
How many
Um,
subscribers do they have now? You told me the other day.
800 and I think it's 890,000 now. 890,000, which is, Disney Plus and Netflix have 200 million each. So long way away, from competing with it. And that's ultimately the space they're getting into, right? They're
Yeah.
trying to provide an alternative, for honestly for those services. I think to make this sort of relevant to the audience, I mean, the thing that I appreciate about them is the way that they're expanding. So what they've done is they've introduced what they call Daily Wire Plus. Which is it's a couple things. It's a way to sort of put a stake in the ground. It's like the Daily Wire is fundamentally a news media organization, and here you have a news media organization producing Western films like their latest, Terror on the Prairie, and it's like, okay, that's maybe a bit of a stretch. So we need sort of something to say, okay, this is going beyond just a news company. This is now a full fledged,
Yeah.
media sort of powerhouse that's being built here. And so that piece of it is being established with, the Daily Wire Plus.
Would
Also,
would the terminology be that they are rebranding? Is that a using that term
um,
correctly or no?
the platform is being rebranded, yes, so they are still the Daily Wire, but
Right.
Daily Wire Plus is what the platform is
Okay,
now.
gotcha.
And it also is a way of sort of signifying that the platform itself is new. It's
Mm,
the underlying tech and everything is new, and over the next 9 or so months, the plan is to really, really invest a lot into the infrastructure of that to make the platform the best it can be.
mm.
But even already, there's at least a sort of skeleton version difference in the platform versus what it was before it went
Gotcha.
live.
Yep.
Um, so that's cool. The other sort of big thing that this signifies is an expansion of content. So they're going even further into um, media relationships, like with Dennis Prager. They already have Prager U
Mm,
videos, but they're going to be creating some exclusive content through them. And probably the biggest announcement was that they have now signed on Jordan Peterson as well.
mm.
Um, and and they've already even got a couple series out there with him, and they're adding more. It's gonna his whole podcast library and everything is now hosted by them. He's they all his media assets and everything they now control, and he is also going to be creating lots of exclusive content and shows and everything for them
I'd
as well.
like I'd like to see
It's
what that check was, how much
yeah,
that came
right.
out to be. I mean,
Seriously.
is it like all or like 90% of Jordan Peterson's things? Like, do they pretty much take
Oh, yeah, they've got
uh
it, yeah. Yeah, now,
Ooh.
whether they're just licensing it, I mean, I don't
Right,
know
right. Who
what
knows?
those terms are, yeah, of
Right.
course.
Whether
Uh,
it's a license though or a full ownership or however it is.
yeah, I don't
That's a
I don't
pretty
know
penny.
yeah, I don't know exactly what it is, but it's sort of because he's a media powerhouse in himself, and so it's sort of a, interesting nod to how important the Daily Wire is that he would actually sign on with
Oh,
them,
yeah.
to be honest, makes
Especially
sense.
since he really does not maybe he's kinda shifted some stuff over the time, but, he does not label himself as a conservative or
Yes,
Republican or
yes,
anything like that. So it's not like he's like, "Oh,
yes.
yeah, like, let me on, I wanna go for the right side." He is
Mhm,
not
yep.
that at all.
I was just about to make this point. In fact, I think it's one of the most important sort of shifts that they really made when they did their town hall announcement yesterday or a couple days ago now. Um, and the point being, it sort of proves the point that conservatives have been trying to make for a very long time, but it's like nobody's listening. Um, conservatives are not trying to like, whatever, like you could list off a couple different things, right? Like nobody's trying to shove God down your throat. Nobody's trying to say like you have to have necessarily straight up conservative values or whatever. I would not say that Jordan Peterson is socially conservative. I would say he's probably socially liberal. I mean, to some extent, I mean, I don't know exactly, but um, the point is not that it's a platform full of Bible thumpers. Now, I mean, and I'm a Christian, and I'm saying this. It's like that's not the point. The point, in fact, is that there is something inhuman about much of what is going on in modern, especially Western, leftist ideology today. It's not necessarily even conservative versus liberal. It is uh, humanity, objective moral right versus wrong. And what I love about this platform is that they're not just looking for people who agree, and they even announced it. Like, this is part of the announcement. They're not just looking for people who agree with them on every little jot and tittle. The point is that there is agreement across sort of um, fundamental human rights and ways of thinking about being human versus not. um,
Right.
and that is sort of the battleground on ideas which they agree. And so it's really refreshing. Whereas, and again, I'm just going to speak kind of freely because this is my podcast and I can do it. The There is sort of a key distinction when you look at sort of what we might call leftism as an ideology in the United States and certainly in other places as well. But I'm in the United States, so that's where I can speak to this. Um, Leftism as an ideology in itself it crumbles under the weight of its own demands. It's so inconsistent. It's not backed by logic, and you can tell this because you can't freely speak. You can't freely. You're constantly in a leftist way of thinking. You're constantly going back to, well, how many points does this person get? Are they black? Are they a woman? Are they gay, trans, lesbian, whatever? Like your whatever your idea is judged by how many of those points you have as to how right it is. And the other on the other side of the aisle, all we're trying to say is, no, that's philosophically wrong. Like, we actually just look at an idea on its merits and logic and say, yes, is this a good idea or a bad idea, and why? It has nothing to do with how many culture points you get for how woke you are or whatever. And so I just love that the platform is trying to expand itself in that way and create an opportunity for people to see, yeah, this is more than just shoving God down your throat or anything like that. It's in fact not that at all. It's just, yeah, we want to provide wholesome content that doesn't sort of bite you with the woke monster at the very end of it. And I think that's great. And they're doing entertainment, more and more media content. They're diving into kids content and just doing a lot of really good stuff. So that's my story of the week. That went a lot longer than I planned,
Yeah.
but I'm
Well,
excited about it.
and this is why we save story of the week for the last part because Steve and I kind of talked when we first started this podcast. It is Story World, and we talk about stories, and every single one of our podcasts focus on that. But we've kind of noticed that our story time has kind of been our time where we just kind of sit and talk and think through thoughts and just kind of give you a little bit more ideas of what we think and how we feel about things. And it's more or less a more general discussion than the initial topic. So
Skip it if you want to. If you think the
skip it
rest
if
of
you
it's
want,
valuable,
or
or
do
this
you
is
want
whatever.
exactly? But one
Yeah.
thing I say that because I'm taking us a little bit further down the rabbit hole, just a little bit, or to go down the rabbit hole with you. Um, on the like with Jordan Peterson coming over to the Wire, and with the most recently movie that came out, What Is a Woman, which I haven't seen yet. I need to watch that. But I've seen there's been Matt Walsh has so many videos and points that he's put out there. I feel like I've seen half the movie anyway. Um, I've seen a lot of like YouTubers, pretty like I wouldn't say like famous, but relatively well-known YouTubers in their like community, like review certain clips of it and everything. And I want to say almost like it seems like 8 or 9 of every 10 that I see are on the I hate to say side, but of the reasoner mind that the people that Matt Welsh is interviewing are just not thinking reasonably and so I guess I said to kind of say that there seems to be a really big shift, especially the generation after us millennials and then like our kids generations, generation alpha, where there seems to be a more like conservative or like reason minded shift in that direction. So I'm really excited to see what the next like 10, 20, 30 years has for that shift because I think we're going to see that coming.
Yeah. Yeah, that's exactly right. And I mean, it's kind of, we talked about this concept a while ago, but it's this idea of storytelling is uh, truth making. Um, at a certain point, yes, everybody's story matters. Like your story is valuable. This is the Story World podcast. We believe that, but a personal experience just simply cannot. It's not in the same category as logic, facts, and objective data, right? When something is objective, it's that way because it originates in the object. It's outside of you.
Mhm.
It's not subject driven. It's object driven, and so those two things are not. Well, they are mutually exclusive. And your personal experience of a situation, if it disagrees with the actual facts and logic of a situation, then it's wrong, and that's kind of how facts and logic work. Um,
Mhm.
so it's in that regard, it's very, very important to have, both to recognize the importance of both and never let them rule one or the other out.
Yeah, like we've talked about before in the podcast, and I've kind of said it to varying degrees, either this way exactly or a little bit different. But essentially, you make decisions and sound thought and reason based on statistics or logic and what naturally follows. But if you come across someone or a situation where an individual is not part of the good statistics and is on the bad side of those statistics, it doesn't help that you spit out statistics at that person. So like make decisions based on the statistics, but care and love those who are on the bad side of those because obviously those do happen. And so just find that good balance. I think Christians are doing better, but there's a long way to go to honestly just showing the love of Christ, like really.
100%. Yeah, no, you're 100% right. 100% right. Okay, man.
All right.
Yeah, this
I
has
think that
been
wraps
good.
it up. Good
Yes, sir.
podcast, and excited to see what movie you pick out next for us, Steve.
Yeah, man, I'm pumped too.
We got a couple really good, exciting episodes coming up too. One a little bit more serious topic. I won't announce it. We'll just have to find out. But serious topic, and then yeah, a couple other things. But we seem to be not short of any ideas, so we'll have plenty
No,
rolling out.
absolutely, 100%. Thanks for being a listener to the podcast. Super thrilled to have you around. And hey, tell your friends, right? This is how the podcast will spread. So we're excited to have you and see you on the next one.
Thanks, everyone. See ya.